The morning sun had just risen over the quiet suburbs when Sarah Bennett rushed out of her apartment building, already late for her office meeting, and hungry for a fight with anything that stood in her way, because the day had started with spilled coffee, a broken heel, and a phone full of unpaid bills that reminded her how hard life had been lately. She marched toward her car, heels clicking sharply on the pavement. But before she could unlock it, she noticed a dusty old sedan parked right behind her, blocking her exit like a stubborn obstacle. Her irritation burst instantly, without even thinking. She stormed toward the car and started banging on the window, shouting for the driver to move, because she didn't have time for this nonsense and she was tired of people thinking they could walk over her. Inside the car sat a tired-looking man with messy hair, a worn-out shirt, and a little girl sleeping in the back seat with a school bag clutched in her arms, and he rolled down the window slowly as if he had already dealt with too much trouble for the day. Sarah didn't care. She exploded at him, calling him careless, irresponsible, and rude for blocking her car, waving her hands like she owned the whole street. The man apologized politely, but his calmness only annoyed her more, because she felt like he wasn't taking her anger seriously. She told him he should learn how to park properly, how to wake up earlier, how to not inconvenience hard-working people, completely unaware that she was speaking to the CEO of the very company she worked for, a man she had never met in person because he rarely visited the office. The man, Daniel Hart, simply nodded, trying not to wake his daughter as he whispered that he had parked for just 2 minutes, because she wasn't feeling well and he didn't want to rush her. But Sarah didn't listen. She just kept scolding him for being one of those irresponsible, single dads who don't know what they're doing. And Daniel's eyes darkened for a moment. Though he stayed silent, she didn't know his name. She didn't recognize his face. She only saw a man in her way. Daniel backed up the car slowly, still polite, still quiet, and Sarah stomped back to her own car, muttering under her breath about useless people. But as Daniel drove away, a small thought flickered in the back of her mind that maybe she had overreacted, yet pride pushed it away. She started her engine, ready to speed to work, having no idea that the man she had just yelled at would be sitting in the meeting room that morning waiting to introduce himself as the new active CEO of Hart Innovations, the company she depended on for her salary, her stability, and her hope for promotion. And the man she had just humiliated would be the one holding her entire future in his. Sarah sped down the road, with her heart still pounding from the argument, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white, trying to convince herself that she wasn't the one at fault and that the man should have simply parked somewhere else like any responsible adult. But the deeper she drove, the more guilt crawled up her chest as she remembered the little girl in the backseat looking pale and tired, and for a moment she wondered if she should have been kinder, yet her frustration drowned the thought because life had been pushing too hard on her lately. She reached the towering glass building of Hart Innovations and rushed through the lobby, ignoring the security guard who greeted her like always, because all she could think about was being late for a meeting she had spent the whole night preparing for, a meeting she believed could help her finally secure the promotion she had been chasing for nearly 3 years. When she entered the elevator, she tried to fix her messy hair and smudged eyeliner, but stress made her hands shake, and no matter how she tried to calm herself, she kept thinking about her bills, her rent, and how badly she needed her job to become more stable. By the time she reached the 16th floor, she forced herself to breathe deeply, plastering a professional smile on her face as she walked into the conference room, only for the entire room to fall silent when she stepped inside, because everyone was already seated, including the department heads, the board members, and a tall figure standing at the front of the room with his back turned. Sarah's face turned pale as she took her seat, wishing she could disappear. But before she could even apologize for being late, the man at the front turned around slowly, and her entire world froze when she saw the same calm eyes and familiar face she had yelled at just 30 minutes ago, standing there in a crisp suit, looking nothing like the tired single father from earlier. Her breath caught in her throat as whispers filled the room, and the HR director began introducing him as Mr. Daniel Hart. the founder's son and newly active CEO, while Daniel simply looked at her for a fraction of a second, a look that wasn't angry, wasn't cold, but deeply unreadable, and it terrified her more than if he had yelled. Sweat gathered on her palms as she sank into her chair, realizing she hadn't just argued with a stranger. She had screamed at her own boss, insulted him, and practically ordered him around. Throughout the meeting, Daniel spoke calmly about new plans for the company, about improvements, expansions, and employee support programs. But Sarah couldn't hear anything clearly because her heart kept thumping loudly, drowning out his words as she replayed the morning incident again and again, imagining every possible way she might lose her job by the end of the day. And yet, every time Daniel glanced at her direction, even for a second, she felt a strange mix of fear, regret, and something she couldn't name, a sense that he wasn't the kind of man who punished first, but the kind who watched carefully before deciding anything. As the meeting ended, everyone stood to greet him, to shake his hand, to welcome him formally. But Sarah remained seated, frozen, unable to move, praying that somehow he would leave without noticing her. Though deep down, she knew their confrontation was far from over, and the morning she had tried to forget was about to decide the path of her entire future.